Something's wrong with the software. Okay, now this kind of works. I don't know what's going wrong. Why I can't see the stream in the way it's supposed to be, but whatever, let's begin. I can find that out later. Hello and welcome to number 3 of the situation report of the war in Ukraine. We are currently at the 3rd of September 2022 at 17:42 in Panama, UTC -4. Let's start in the north. In Kharkiv, there are no new reports about Russian attacks. Instead, the Russians report that they defeated a Ukrainian recon troop, 12 people that were supposedly trying to break through their lines, which is kind of surprising because defeating a 12-man group seems like something in this war that shouldn't be worth mentioning, but still they reported it. So that would be kind of an indication that the whole situation there has cooled down to a degree that this is something noteworthy. Apart from that, the Russians claim they defeated a Ukrainian attack from Ruska Losova towards the north, and they also say they defeated a Ukrainian attack starting at Ruski Tishki, north here. So all north of Kharkiv. All of this is coming from the Russian side, Russian sources, so we don't have any proof of this as of now, but that would indicate that as after weeks of Russian initiative, it at least for the moment might have switched back to the Ukrainian side. Apart from that, we only have the usual reports of artillery fire, mostly tube and rocket artillery on the towns close to the front line and on Kharkiv itself, and apart from that, air attacks. In the Donbas front, we have occasionally the report of attacks out of Izium, mostly towards the southeast, towards Sloviansk, and in the direction of Siversk along the front line here, west of Lysychansk. What we can see here now is that the intensity has died down significantly. We again and again, we see days where in 24 hours there has not been a single report of a Russian attack. So that would implicate that the Russian forces there are more like knocking along the front, doing small recon units, mostly trying to fix the Ukrainians in place there. But at least all the offensive activity the Russians show here indicates that it's more a fixing in place and not a serious offensive with the aim of gaining any territory. More offensive activity is happening here in Soledar. Here, the north of the gypsum factory, the Russians are still fighting the Ukrainians. There are some report that the Russians might have advanced further to the northwest, north and south of the town, but it's definitely not surrounded yet. But there are indications that there are field entrenchments which might be Russian. Important, this situation, the front line here close to Soledar is of high importance for the war because especially for the front line here. As we can see, Soledar is reaching 2 lines of communication, 2 good roads going towards the north, which are behind the current front line. So they are ideal to supply to reinforce the current Ukrainian front line. Should, on the other hand, the Russians go from Soledar to Blahodatne and cut those 2 lines, then the whole front in the north here might have to be taken back, might collapse, might be in danger of collapsing, of being surrounded. So in this regard, for the whole northern front, Soledar is a very important point for the Ukrainian defense, and as of now, at least, it's holding. On the other hand, there are reports of small successes in the last weeks along the southeast of Bakhmut. But the latest report is the Ukrainians say a Russian attack on Vesela Dolina has failed. This is here. And Chechens have attacked Zaitseve and Mayorska, the 2 towns here. This is along the old line of the communications where the Russians are still trying to break out of through the fortifications that were being built after 2014. So in this time, in this area, the front is still active. Russians are still attacking. As it seems of now, they might not have had local success in the last 24 to 48 hours, but the Russians still have the initiative. Even though there are some rumors that this might change in the future, this is now a German translation of a Telegram post that's made in Russian. You can translate it yourself, but it indicates basically that the troops have rotated and the fresh troops that have arrived are far better equipped, highly motivated and fresh, and it would be like an indication that they might go on the offensive, on local offensives themselves. There are some rumors in this regard floating around right now that the Ukrainians might do counterattacks close to Bakhmut. We will keep an eye on this, but it's far from proven, so we should not necessarily expect them to happen right now, but at least it's something we should be keeping in mind. Close to Donetsk have been additional attacks, all still aimed at surrounding Avdiivka, as the frontal attacks against it mostly fails. We see attacks from Pisky and north of the town, which mostly seem to have failed. There seems to be a small gains south of the road here. They haven't entered any of the towns to the south, but they seem to have dug in. That at least the indications I find even from pro-Ukrainian sources, so it's an indication that that might actually be true, that the Russians might have gained some ground there. The Ukrainian General Staff also said that Putin now has extended the deadline to conquer all of the Donbass from the 31st of August to the 15th of September, but I guess I could bet $1,000 or maybe $10,000 that this is not going to happen no matter what, because this is the Donbass and they are not going to reach that within 12 days. That much can be sure. Now let's come to Zaporizhzhia, and here it's going to be interesting. The big thing here is obviously the nuclear power plant in Soledar. The IAEO has, so the International Association or whatever, you know, the nuclear, I need to check the name. Wait, don't I have it here? Let me see. IAEO, International Atomic Energy Association or something like this organization. They have now finally arrived at the nuclear power plant, and they reported that there's proof of of damages to the physical integrity of the nuclear power plants, but they didn't mention any details. But from what I understand, they will keep up a permanent presence at the nuclear power plant from now on, which might help prevent future attacks. The Ukrainians themselves, on the other hand, accused the Russians to have withdrawn 100 pieces of military equipment from the nuclear power plant in front of ahead of the inspection. Equipment is not perfectly clear what it's meant. It's like, I guess, everything bigger from a mortar to multiple launch rocket systems, artillery, trucks, armored personnel carriers, stuff like this. So we have seen proof in the last days and weeks of Russian military presence inside of the nuclear power plants, including artillery, and now they have removed it. But the big thing is, what's going around in the media right now is that the inspectors of the IAEA asked why there is this head of the missile, why it's looking like it's coming from Russia, and the guy in blue here is a handler by the Russians, who is telling them in this video that basically after penetrating the earth, the rocket tilts over, turns around, and thus indicates like it's coming from the different direction. Now we have some videos to that we can see here. It seems to be a Uragan rocket motor, which is detached from the warhead prior to impact, and it seems to be the warhead of one of this, and we see it just hits and sticks. It doesn't turn around. It basically drills itself into the ground. We have more of this. We have more of it here. Where is it? We have more images of it here, of other examples. Wait, here it is. That's what I wanted to show. We see here, obviously, here it's concrete or asphalt that it dug itself in. This, on the other hand, we see how deep it entered the ground. Nowhere close do we see anything where it seems to have flipped over. Everything seems to be sticking the way it comes in. That's also the indication here. As we can see, the angles are fairly close. Now, in full transparency, I am convinced that this missile warhead, that the propellant unit came from the Russian side. But what as we can see here, it drilled itself fairly deep into the ground. And if there is no logical explanation for what the guy in blue says in this context. Either it drills itself in, and if it drills itself in, it can't flip over to the other side, or it flips over to the other side because of its momentum, but then it doesn't drill itself in. So that doesn't fit to each other, and as it's clearly drilled into the ground, it must have come from the Russian side. The only issue here is that this mound in the front that we see doesn't make any sense. Now, if it comes and drills itself into the ground, now remember this propellant unit is burnt out. The warhead is no longer attached. There is no explosion. It's basically just a heavy metal tube coming with a high speed, drilling itself into something. Why would there be a mount like this? Doesn't make any sense. Now, a forensics team with better images might say that this here looks like shovel marks. Maybe the Russians have dug it out to appear to make an impression of something like this. I can't accuse them of this. This is just a possibility. But this open here, this dugout in front of the propellant unit is not, I can't explain. I'm not an expert on this. I've seen a couple over the years. I've seen quite a number of those warheads, and I've never heard of them flipping over towards the side. I know that from pictures like this, you can usually prove where it's coming from, and that they flip over like this seems a ludicrous explanation, but I can't explain that mount in the front, so I would not bet my life on it that the Russian guy's explanation might not have a small chance of being truthful, but then again, it's dug far too deep into the ground for it to justify that explanation by itself. The other pictures I have here is just other examples, and here, of course, we see also one that drilled itself into the ground, but I think that's from the Georgian War in 2008, and we obviously touched the metal of the truck here, so it can't really be compared in this regard. Now, what we also have is from Kherson. Now, that's interesting. Marivka and Soledar. And has fallen? What? So what we have now, we come to the big part of this situation report. That's the counteroffensive in Kherson. Now, the thing is, right now, with the Ukrainians doing a complete blackout. Oh yeah, thank you for the reminder. Thank you for the reminder to change the name. So the Ukrainians currently do a complete media blackout. So there is no official source for the Ukrainian side. Every information we get about this current counteroffensive, the current Ukrainian counteroffensive, is coming from official Russian sites like the Russian Ministry of Defense. It's coming from Russian politicians, administrative persons, and it's coming from the pro-Russian media, pro-Russian Telegram, etc. The only thing from the Ukrainian side are some pro-Ukrainian accounts in Twitter, in Telegram, but they don't have official sources. So currently the Ukraine has ceded completely the side of information warfare to the Russian side, which makes it extremely hard to judge the actual situation of the war and of the offensive by itself. It's interesting though to watch the Russian reports, because it's either the Russian comments either indicate that the invasion, that the counteroffensive has completely failed already, or that it's actually going really well. Because the comments are so one-sided, so loop-sided after months of military commentators criticizing the Russian side for their weaknesses, for not being fast enough, for not being hard enough. And I'm talking about the pro-Russian commenters here. That now suddenly everything is going fine. And that is kind of suspicious. But let's go to the official words. Shoigu was saying the offensive is happening because the Western puppet master, obviously Ukraine is a puppet of NATO, they are supposed to see, Ukraine is supposed to prove them that it's actually capable of an offensive. The interior minister of the LNR, the so-called Luhansk People's Republic, Vitaly Kislenyov, said the counteroffensive is a mass suicide and the Ukrainians suffering horrendous losses. Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, said the inner problems within Ukraine will force the end of the war fairly soon. Russian channels on Telegram also say the same, set the same picture, paint the same picture. Thousands of Ukrainian dead. My German channel is getting visitors every day from people claiming that the Ukrainians have already lost 2,000, 3,000 people in this offensive, because the pro-Russian Telegram are painting a picture that the whole offensive was an utter disaster and basically a significant part of the Ukrainian forces is already destroyed. Generally, though, you have to say an offensive like this is not over within 3 to 5 days, neither in a good way nor in a bad way. What we see here is a slow creeping forward, a probing of the front line, as the Ukrainian forces are not numerous enough to do an overwhelming offensive, a combined arms warfare, pushing forward. For instance, they lack the mobile air defense system to properly protect them, and should they break through here and march down towards the Novakakova Dam, they would leave their own air cover, as they don't have air superiority. Every offensive needs to happen under the protection of their own air defense system. And apart from the German Gepard anti-aircraft tank, they don't have much mobile anti-air systems. Of course, they have some Strela. Osa could potentially also follow. They might still have some Tunguska and some Shilkas, but when it comes to properly armored units, armored air defense, they are fairly limited. So as soon as they push down here, the Russian Air Force and the Russian attack helicopters should basically shred those Ukrainian forces into pieces, which means that even if everything goes well, they can only go forward step by step, which means the whole offensive will be drawn out, even if it goes really well. So we can't expect a result within days, whether it's a complete disaster, this offensive, or it's not. And I explicitly want to say I am not at a point where I say this was a success. I think it's fairly possible that the Ukrainians failed and that they failed completely. I don't think it's too likely, but as of now, I don't have any proof in either direction that satisfies me well enough. The Ukrainian General Staff was talking about Russian attacks towards Potomkine, which is here, and here it's shown as in Ukrainian hands. Now, I've read an explanation in pro-Ukrainian internet that supposedly some Russian troops were encircled here and got attacked. Some Russian troops were encircled and other Russian troops wanted to free them, wanted to fight their way through so they could escape. That would explain the attack, but that was pro-Ukrainian media, obviously. But in general, an attack by the Russians while the Ukrainian offensive happens, and the Ukrainians themselves talk about that attack, that shouldn't be the best of a sign. But that in itself is doesn't point the full picture. The Ukrainian General Staff also said the Russians flown air attacks against Kreshchenivka. But the interesting part is Kreshchenivka is here, and so far in most of the situation reports, whatever you read, Kreshchenivka is in Russian hands. So when the Russians fly air attacks close to Kreshchenivka, that means the Ukrainians must have reached to that point, and that at least indicates that the Ukrainians have reached the town, if not captured it. The Russian side is talking, on the other hand, of Ukrainian attacks against Vysokopilia, which doesn't surprise us too much because it's on the northern side along some lines of communication. So it's an obvious attack, an obvious area that the Ukrainians should attack when they are attacking from Kryvyi Rih. Now the most glaring positive results I found on a page that is generally more or less not too far off from the truth, but clearly pro-Ukrainian, was claiming that the Ukrainians have already reached Mykhalivka, which is down here, which would mean that they achieved some kind of breakthrough along the banks of the river Dnieper, which at some point might force the whole side here to retreat, because the main line of communication must be in Ukrainian hand to reach that town. But that again, that's pro-Ukrainian internet, which is, as of my knowledge, not confirmed at all at this point. The Russians also said the Ukrainians are south of Kostromka and they are attacking Shazlivne. Now that's interesting because Kostromka is here and Shazlivne is here. So this map, just to remind you, is clearly pro-Ukrainian, but they don't show the nowhere close. They don't show the Ukrainians nowhere close, and to attack towards that direction indicates that they must have at the very least taken the town of Kostromka, which shows that out of the bridgehead across the Inhulets, they have managed to break out. Then again, we have reports of those fights. We can't say whether they have been beaten back, but there have been some local successes, which as at least temporary and which are to some degree already confirmed. But that again doesn't mean that they couldn't have had the losses the Russians claim. The Ukrainians we have reports of attacks on the ferries at Lvove and Kotsatske. So that's here, ferries that are going across the Dnieper in those two places, which is important because the road bridge across the dam here has collapsed. We've seen it on images. Let me see, where is it? I have images somewhere. I might not find them. Sorry. Here it is. So we see here it has collapsed. So the Russians have to rely by now mostly on ferries. Everything on the bridges where the pieces still stand is probably mostly foot traffic, maybe light cars like pickups or something. But any heavy reinforcement, any supplies have to cross the river by bridge by now. The Russian then again claim they have, and that's also interesting, they claim they have reconquered Zeleny High and Ternovi Podi in the direction of Mykolaiv. Now we are talking about this year and this year. Those two towns have been recaptured, which means they have to have been in Ukrainian hands at least temporarily, which also indicates that attacks out of Mykolaiv in the direction of Kherson have at least been partially successful and at least temporarily successful. They also say, the pro-Russian Telegram also say the Ukrainians defend in Mirne and Lyubomyrivka, which is up here and according to this map still in Russian hand. So the front line, at least according to pro-Russian Telegram, is at least east of this line in this regard. In general, there are several signs like this which show that at least initial success can be assumed by the Ukrainian part, which is even confirmed by the Russians as of now, as for instance they claim to have recaptured places which nobody even thought was ever in Ukrainian hands since the Russians conquered it. The Ukraine also is reporting the destruction of a Russian pontoon bridge close to Darivka. This is here. And as we can see, this is the main line of communication from the dam at Nova Kakova to Kherson. So anything that's crossing the river also along those two ferry points here can no longer right now cross the Inhulets River at Darivka and has to find another way, which will weaken the supply of this whole front further. The Ukraine is reporting several, I think it was like 12 or 14 different ammunition depots. I have not written them down and recorded them individually because in the end, let's be honest, it isn't that important if I say one was here and one was there and one was there. They claim to have destroyed several command posts and one ground stations for UCAV, for drones. The Russians, on the other hand, say they shot down 14 HIMARS missiles over Kherson and Novakakova, which on the other hand, I haven't seen any proof. I've seen some video of anti-air activity from the Russian side, but I couldn't identify a shot down there, which in itself is not proof of either way, but we have seen video proof of detonations on the ground where the missiles hit, so at least some of them got through. That much can be sure. There is a report that a pontoon bridge was close to the Antonivsky railroad bridge. That should be this one here, and that has been hit, but it might be a translation mistake because the video I just deleted, I think I might have mistakenly moved it away. Yeah, this one here. The video here I had shows that there is a ferry activity with pontoon ferries from this point to this point up here, and there is no proof of a pontoon bridge here. So what I see as a report that the pontoon bridge has been hit is likely that one of those pontoon ferries is hit, and we can see on this channel how big those are. And we can see, where does he have it? How many trucks and vehicles are on one of those ferries. The channel in mention is this one here. So you can, I'll just post the video so you can give the guy the credits he deserves. The car bridge has collapsed. I already mentioned that. And there is more report that at Oleshki, where there's now the situation has forced upon the Russian to turn this into a supply dump. Some of that has been hit again with long-range Ukrainian artillery missile systems, because the bridge here has also been destroyed or at least heavily damaged by the Ukrainians. So obviously there's a backlog of supply and reinforcements building up as it can't cross over that bridge close to the river anymore and to the ferries that are also operating here. The Ukrainians claim that some building that was housing a part of the Odessa University, which apparently has some local department in Kherson, has been hit by HIMARS, and it was filled and it was used as a base by the Russian armed forces, and thus they claim heavy losses among troops. And while I have seen pictures of a destroyed building, I obviously haven't seen any pictures of losses, so I can't confirm that the claim of having destroyed significant number of Russian troops can be confirmed in this way. When it comes to the Kherson front, we have several reports about reinforcements. In Mariupol, there's the report of 10 tanks being on trailers being moved to west in the western direction, which are likely going to Kherson, and basically several reports daily of truck trains crossing the Kerch Bridge, moving west likely in the direction of Kherson as well. So the Russians are urgently getting reinforcements to the area. The Ukrainian Telegram, pro-Ukrainian Telegram also is reporting Russians are getting more barges towards Novakakova, likely for more ferries or even for a ship bridge. There is more report about remote mining by the Russians, likely with cluster ammunition, cluster mining from MLRS, multiple launch rocket systems, on their side, like Uragan and Smerch and something like this, which would indicate their whole defensive stance, because you don't mine the area in front of you when you are supposed to attack fairly soon, which would still show that the initiative as of now is on the Ukrainian side. That's it for the Kherson front. I have one more report about the Crimea, that in Belbek, the airport, there are pictures of a new S-400 battery, which would show the Russians are reinforcing the air defense on the peninsula, even though the last reports we had was that they were sending anti-drone systems for the small commercial drones, and the S-400 is unsuited for that and a complete exaggeration. So obviously they are also preparing for other kinds of attacks. We have another report about partisans. The occupation police in Kherson has said they found a terrorist headquarter in Kherson and took it out. So obviously when they say terrorist headquarters, we can expect this to be partisans, pro-Ukrainian partisans that have been caught and taken out. There is another information now about Russia. There is one independent survey institute in Russia, Levada, and it has done a survey on the 1st of September about the support of the Russians for the war. 76% of the persons that were asked said they support the war, 46 of them strongly, 30 in principle, while 48% are for continuing the war. As of now, it's already 44% that prefer peace negotiations. And quite interestingly, the majority of the 8 to 39-year-olds are the ones supporting peace negotiations, which kind of makes sense as they are the ones that will have to go to the front line if it happens that Russia mobilizes the masses and forces the conscripts to go to war, declares war, basically. Interesting, though, is that in March, the strong support was still at 53%. Now it has dropped to 46%. That's only 7% less, but it still shows some kind of trend downwards. I guess it shouldn't frighten the Kremlin yet, but it shows that further political acts have to consider that the support is slowly dropping. And coming to the last news I have like this is towards Europe, towards Germany, that Nord Stream 1, the main gas pipeline that supplied Germany directly from Russia through the Baltic Sea, is turned off because of unexpected maintenance, and there is no date of when it is supposed to turn on again. Now we are coming to the further informations I have found, which I want to introduce to you. Now there's a Twitter blog that says the amount of vehicles and units that are on the Kherson front, on the eastern side, on the right side of the Dnieper, and as we can see here, it's all just guesstimate. We see numbers of a lot of units, 55 to 74%. Obviously, the person making this graph has no real clue about it, taking just the informations he can collect. And he comes, and as we can see, to a fairly wide margin, 15 to 25,000 soldiers, 150 to 200 tanks, and roughly 500 infantry fighting vehicles. What is interesting, though, is this part of what he said is, in order to support the troops, they need 500 trucks per day. And if I understand that correctly, it takes, if we take as a basis 2 points of crossing across the Dnieper, then it turns out that 10 trucks must pass through each crossing every minute. Now, to be perfectly honest, I am not completely sure I understand his calculation, but as we have seen the dimensions of the distances of the ferries that are traveling, for instance, from here to here, which is 2 kilometers. Now, everyone seeing a boat, knowing a boat of this size, this is not going 40 knots. So probably the ferry going back and forth at the very least takes half an hour. Basically, his argument is that it's extremely unlikely that Russia is of now able to supply enough by trucks, or it's at the very least highly challenging. But on the other hand, I have seen visual proof of Mi-8 helicopters with escorts from Ka-52 that are supposedly flying across the Dnieper right now to fly in supplies. In past status reports, I've already said that the Russian helicopter force is massive. Before the war, they had officially, I think, around 770 Mi-8. So in generally, they should be able to fly enough over. But then on the other hand, that creates new problems, because that amount of helicopters means, first of all, they could never use all of them, because they would still need some at other places of the front and in other places of their military. But a massive helicopter force needs supply, needs maintenance, needs big supply dumps, and they themselves can be targeted again and would suffer more losses from HIMARS, because especially the warheads that detonate above ground, shredding everything around them with shrapnels, would be extremely effective against helicopters, which are light-skinned and can easily be damaged. Still, we have those informations. Now that's from Pravdine. I think I had that here. Where was it? Here. Pravdine, which supposedly shows Russian soldiers capitulating. We can see the white flags being waved here. It's just this again. It doesn't really prove too much in the whole context of the war, even when one side is winning drastically, it usually takes a couple of prisoners from the other side. There are even turncoats. I remember seeing videos from 1945, I think it was April, and the Oder front, where Russians had left their own forces to run to the German side because they were so afraid of attacking. There are always some people capitulating, some people switching sides. Aren't really an indication for the whole war. So in this case, it's more like an anecdote, something we can see here, but less of a proof. But what I've forgotten here when I'm coming back here, as I remembered, one more thing. Now, the most pro-Ukrainian report about territorial gains is that the Ukrainians roughly reached that line here, including that town along the sea, and that town here. As again, not shown here, and again, not enough proof that I would say they've reached it. I just can say that the massive amount of different information makes it impossible as of now to securely say that this counteroffensive either has failed or has been a success. I don't think anyone seriously can say that now, working just with open intelligence. This is a German article about Russian managers that seemingly live kind of dangerous now within the war. The amount of managers that have died in the last month since the war began by suicide, by falling out of windows or something like this, is fairly staggering. We see one here from Lukoil. We see the second here from Astra Shipping, third from the Karavayev company, number 4 again from Lukoil, number 5 and 6 from Gazprom and Novatek, number 7 Gazprom, number 8, number 9 Gazprom Invest. So the number of Russian managers dying suddenly in this war seems to be fairly dangerous for Russian generals. Here now we have from Kiev Independent, which seems to be a fairly reliable news source, and as their name says, they seem to have proven that they are actually fairly independent and are not a mouthpiece of the Ukrainian government. Still, they are pro-Ukrainian, but they now say 7,000 civilians is supposedly the official data from the Ukrainian side. Now, I want to remember you that in the last status report, I think it was in the latest SITREP situation report, that I've said that I've shown a tweet which claimed around 70 or 80,000 civilian death in Mariupol alone. And I think I have explained it in depth how the Ukrainian side has an interest in inflating those numbers to gain international sympathy. Now here we have another number. This 7,000 would claim the total number, including Mariupol. I am incapable of judging the numbers from afar, obviously, but 7,000 seems fairly low, seeing the destruction of Mariupol and knowing how difficult it was for civilians to leave the city for quite a while. But now you have a completely different number to show how much the information that are available vary overall in this environment about this war in the context of the current information warfare. This is a funny article. It's translated to German. I'm sorry for that, but I can post the original here in the chat. it says, I guess it came with the translation now. So let me do the original. Post it. Supposedly the Ukrainians listened to the audio of a recorded phone call by a Russian officer to his wife, and they said that they are going to capitulate on September 15th for whatever reason. I'm not really too sure how I should see that, how I should judge that, but I guess we will see in 12 days whether there's going to be a mass capitulation in Kherson by Russian troops. I kind of would doubt it, though. And now this is something what I've said on the German channel for months, where I've warned that the Russians are forcing the Ukrainians to take Russian passports. But obviously, as soon as you're a Russian citizen, you can be drafted. And this seems to be now proof that in Melitopol, which is the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, now those Ukrainians who took the Russian passport now get draft letters to be forced into the military, into Russian forces to fight against their countrymen in probably with a few days training as well, like we heard from the Donbass, where the forced mobilization has sent troops with as little as 3 days of training into combat. Here is for those, you can pause the video if you want to read it. This is the Google translation of it, so you can prove it for yourself. Now, here's one more information about the partisan warfare. Maxim Makrynov was a partisan in Tokmak. Tokmak is in the northern part of the occupied Oblast of Zaporizhzhia, and he was apparently identified by the Russians, and when they came to arrest him, he blew himself up, killing 2 more Russian soldiers. And Russia now has reached one round number in this war, which probably doesn't warrant congratulations from the wider audience, but now it is proven that they have lost over 1,000 main battle tanks, including 289 captured and 51 abandoned, which might have been captured by the Ukrainians as well. But then again, it has to be somehow measured, because not every tank captured will have been put into service on the Ukrainian side, but at least a significant, at least a sizable part of those roughly 300 are now or have been sent to the Ukrainian forces to fight on their side. 1,000 main battle tanks now lost, and proven lost, as Oryx does a very good job in proving every single loss, and should have a fairly high accuracy rating of maybe roughly 90%. This also will not show every single lost Russian tank, so we can expect at least 30% more or less more. So it's likely that the Russians have of now lost 1,300 tanks, if not more. One almost last message we have is what Russia's invasion in Ukraine has created. Not only do Finland and Sweden join NATO, which now has gained 2 powerful new nations, but Finland, which is one of the border states, having over 1,000 kilometers of border directly with Russia, will now increase its military spending by 20%, up to 2.25% of GDP. And the last message is that the White House, so President Biden, is asking Congress for 13.7 billion additional funding for Ukraine in both financial aid and military aid. So that was it. I'll take a quick zip to wetten my throat, and then I'm open for some questions if the small live stream that is here has some questions to ask. Mayorsk. You say Mayorsk has fallen. Let me quickly check that. No, not that one. I'm not sure which one. Soledar. Or was Soledar? Ah, okay. Ah, now I remember. Okay, it's that town down here probably. That is supposedly has fallen by now. Okay. Unless, as of now, as said, I'm starting the live stream here, which I will try to do from now on twice a week. And obviously the channel is really small yet and still has to grow. So the Q&A is rather limited as of now. Right now, I'm actually not seeing a single question. In the future, if you join me in the live stream, I will answer your questions, which on the German side has proven to be highly interesting to the viewers, which really value my expertise. So I hope I can entertain you too. And before I end the stream, I need to show the viewers, which is the little terrorist always disturbing my stream here. That was it for now. So I hope you enjoyed it. Next time, if you come to the live stream, you have the opportunity to ask questions, which I will answer as faithfully and as competent as I'm capable of. As a military historian who is working for 30 years in the about this topic, I think I have some expertise answering some questions, and I don't hesitate at all to tell the audience when I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm not forcing answers where there's no way to actually answer them, where I don't have the knowledge to answer them. That's it for now. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here, and see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell button to not miss any of the future videos. Oh, isn't he cute? And I would love if you recommend it to friends and acquaintances to help the channel grow, that we reach a point where I don't have to do live streams in front of 14 people, but maybe in front of 1,400, like it is possible on the German stream. Thank you very much for tonight, and see you soon.